5 people stepped into a carbon fiber tube and never came back. And the reason why is more infuriating than you think. That blunt truth is the opening line of the U.S. Coast Guard's 335-page investigative report released this week. And it sets the tone for a document that reads less like a dry government memo and more like a thriller with a tragic ending. The report concludes that the June 2023 implosion of OceanGate's Titan submersible was not a freak accident, but a preventable disaster, driven by hubris, negligence, and a corporate culture that punished anyone who dared to say this isn't safe. But here's where it gets controversial. The report explicitly states that if CEO Stockton Rush had survived, the Coast Guard would have asked the Department of Justice to open a criminal probe. In other words, the man who marketed himself as a visionary explorer is now labeled by federal investigators as the single most culpable figure in the deaths of 4 paying customers and himself. Let that sink in for a moment. Who was on board? Stockton Rush, 61, OceanGate's founder and pilot. Shahzada Dawood, 48, a Pakistani business magnate. Suleiman Dawood, 19, Shahzada's son, who reportedly carried a Rubik's Cube to break a world record at the bottom of the ocean. Hamish Harding, 58, a British aviation tycoon and adventurer. Paul-Henri Nargeolet, 77, a legendary French Titanic expert who had already visited the wreck more than 30 times. All 5 perished in milliseconds when the sub's hull lost structural integrity, roughly 3,500 meters beneath the North Atlantic. 8 root causes, none of them mysterious. The report distills the catastrophe into 8 interlocking failures. Think of them as dominoes. Remove any one, and the chain reaction might have stopped. 1. Engineering shortcuts. OceanGate never applied fundamental engineering principles for extreme depth environments. Translation: they skipped the math. 2. Hull fatigue unknown. The company had no reliable data on how many dive cycles the carbon fiber hull could endure before critical weakening. 3. Data overload. Insight underload. Titan carried a real-time acoustic monitoring system that screamed warnings, yet no one systematically analyzed the noise patterns that signaled fiber delamination. 4. Damage history ignored. Earlier dives produced visible cracks and water intrusion. Instead of grounding the sub, OceanGate patched and pressed on. 5. Carbon fiber's Achilles heel. Repeated compression and decompression caused microfractures in the composite layers. Fractures that traditional metals would have revealed long before failure. 6. Post-mishap silence. After each mishap, there was no formal incident review, no root cause analysis, no paper trail. 7. Toxic culture. Engineers who voiced concerns were labeled obstructionists and either fired or threatened. One former employee testified, "We were told if you're not a team player, there's the door." 8. Off-season neglect. The sub sat outdoors, exposed to UV and salt spray, accelerating material degradation. Basic preventative maintenance, like storing the vessel in a climate-controlled hangar, was deemed too expensive. And this is the part most people miss. The final trigger was not a single dramatic bang, but a gradual, invisible compromise of the hull that reached a tipping point the moment Titan descended past 3,400 meters. A culture of silence, spreadsheets, and all good here during a 2-week public hearing in September 2024. More than 24 witnesses painted a surreal picture. Employees tracked the sub's position with a hand-typed Excel spreadsheet. Yes, literally typing latitude and longitude every 5 minutes, because OceanGate refused to invest in automated GPS logging. Former contractor Antonella Wilby described the process as absolutely idiotic and error-prone. Tony Nissen, a former engineering director, admitted he refused to board Titan for a test dive after noticing delamination sounds during earlier missions. His reward? Termination. David Lockridge, once OceanGate's director of marine operations, testified that he predicted hull failure years in advance. "I knew the hull would fail," he said bluntly. "It's an absolute mess. The last text message received from Titan? All good here." It was sent minutes before the hull imploded. The whistleblower who could have changed everything. Back in 2018, a concerned employee filed a whistleblower complaint alleging safety violations. OceanGate shelved it. The Coast Guard report calculates that a timely investigation could have forced the company either to meet regulatory standards or cancel the Titanic expedition altogether. Lives, in theory, would have been saved. Where does the industry go from here? OceanGate has suspended all operations. The National Transportation Safety Board is conducting its own parallel inquiry. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard is urging Congress to create a new regulatory framework for civilian deep-sea vehicles, an area currently operating in a legal gray zone. But here's the uncomfortable question nobody wants to ask. Are thrill-seeking tourists partly to blame for fueling a market that rewards speed and spectacle over safety? Or is the fault entirely on companies like OceanGate for selling an illusion of exploration without the rigor of engineering? Your turn. Was Stockton Rush a reckless gambler who got people killed, or a visionary who simply ran out of luck? Should deep-sea tourism be banned outright, or can smart regulation make it as safe as commercial aviation? Drop your thoughts below. Agreement, outrage, or anything in between. The families of the victims are reading. And the debate is far from over.